So, like I said, I wanted to do another recording here, and I wanted to share this next resource with you. And what you're looking at, is the Kelowna Volleyball Club Long-Term Athlete Development Plan, or the LTAD. So this is something that we've been thinking about doing for a little bit now, and what we want to achieve with this is to help coaches who come into our club see where they fit within our system. So if you're a brand new coach coming into the club and you really don't know what you need to be coaching for your specific age group, hopefully this document will help you with that. If you've been coaching a particular age group for a really long time, you probably have a pretty good idea of many of the things that you want to work on with your players, and you probably know what they need to work on. And hopefully this just provides you with a little bit of reference material as to sort of compare what you've been working on, and maybe give you a few ideas. So I have mine open in front of me, and I encourage you to open yours too, and just take a look through it. So we tried to break it up, make it a little more compact. This is taken from the Volleyball Canada Long-Term Athlete Development Plan, but it's also taken from some observations and some learning that have happened from some coaches within the valley here. So maybe what are some of our local needs for Kelowna? So we can look at some of the other clubs around us, and we can also look at our university to sort of say, okay, what are the needs that Steve Manuel or Brad Hudson or whatever coaches are there, what are some of the needs that the university or college coaches might be looking for in volleyball players? And then also just observing from what some of our national team coaches have said, and to sort of say, okay, this is where the international game is. And I know that maybe if you're a 12U coach or 13U coach and you're thinking, what do I have to think about with what professionals are doing? Well, the idea behind a long-term athlete development plan is that whether you have a 12U player or an 18U player, they hopefully fit somewhere along that path. And it might be the very beginning of the path, it might be just a few steps forward on that path, and then it might be closer to if they're 18U and they are highly skilled and genetically gifted to be super tall, then maybe they're a little bit closer to professional volleyball than we think. So anyway, it was kind of born from all of those things melded together, and we just tried to condense it down into sort of two or three condensed little boxes for you to be able to check. The language that's used, that we're going to just sort of for consistency's sake, was the introduce, the develop, and stabilize. So we're going to try and use that language as much as possible. And I'll sort of, as I go through it, there'll be a lot of, what this document is, and then there'll be some what it isn't. So the first thing that I'll say what it isn't is this is not going to tell you how to coach. What we want is you to be the type of coach that you want to be. We don't want to tell you how to coach. Hopefully this document will provide you with more of a framework. The bare bones minimum to sort of say, okay, this is maybe what I need to work on, and then use your talents as a coach to try and pull those techniques or those tactics out of your players. So if you open up your document, I encourage you to actually read through the overall goals for each age group. So even if you are a 16U coach, read through the 12U overall goal. Read through the 13U and 14U. And hopefully year after year, whether you continue to coach with us in the future or whether this is your 30th season coaching, like some of our more senior coaches, or whether it's your first year coaching, hopefully you can see sort of where those players should be coming from before you, but also what you need to do to prepare your players for after they're finished being coached by you, because we don't typically have coaches that go from 12U all the way to 18U and stay with one team. Typically our coaches will stick with a team for 2, maybe 3 years, and then we usually try and pass them off to other coaches, to new coaches. Um, and so if we have this document that sort of flows from 12U all the way up to 18U, it can be a little bit more consistent, and once it's been in place for a couple of years, then as coaches you can start to expect that, if you're a 15U coach, you can expect that the 14Us the previous year were working on a specific set of skills, and tactics and techniques, so that hopefully you don't have to introduce something that should have been introduced at the 14U level or the 13U level. So one thing you're going to see is a lot of overlap, because this is the first year we're trying to bring it out. So sometimes some things that should have been introduced at, let's say, 14U, maybe they're being in the introduced phase of the 16U, and we've intentionally kept them overlapped so that, okay, yeah, maybe this should have been introduced earlier, maybe it hasn't been, maybe it has. Let's just make sure we cover our bases. So like I said, this is really meant to be bare bones, a structure, and we want you to build on top of it. So if we go to the 12U, and I'm not going to go through this line by line, by the way, so don't think that. So if we go to the 12U, you can read at the top, says the overall goal: to prepare all 12U aged players for 13U volleyball. Pretty simple overall goal. And then there's just a little blurb about expanding that. And we've included the long-term athlete development plan stages. So the learning stage is learning to train. And then we include some technical goals first. So we want to introduce, so what skills are we introducing? Serving, passing, setting, attacking, and some key aspects of those skills that we want to introduce. So some really, really basic stuff. And then we want to develop, serving, passing, setting, and then we want to stabilize serving and passing. So even though we're introducing, more skills, what that means is we wouldn't necessarily spend as much time on everything that we're introducing. We want to spend more of our coaching time on the develop and the stabilize aspects. The introducing is more of the fun thing. So, yes, add those things in. And again, if something's on here that you want to introduce to your athletes that's not on your list, yeah, introduce it. Have some fun with them. It's totally fine to do that kind of stuff. But remember, we do have some goals that we want to achieve for each age group. So if you're not working on stabilizing for the 12U, serving and passing, so that your players have a good understanding of how to serve, how to pass, by the time they finish 12U, okay, well, then we should be working a little bit harder on that. So that's just a quick example. And then if we went to the tactical goals, we start to look at, okay, where do we want setting to happen? From which position? So setting. And this might be something new, but we want to train setters from position 3 instead of position 2. So our thought is behind that, if we have all of our 12 and 13U kids learning to set, 12 and 13U athletes learning to set from position 3 instead of position 2, that means every single one of our players is learning how to front and back set. Now every player doesn't become a setter, but wouldn't it be great if every kid that comes through our club knows how to front and back set? That would be amazing. And we would have a leg up on our competition because our kids, our athletes, would know how to back set, even if they're not becoming setters. Because when setters set from 2, how often is the left side or position 4 set that much? I mean, most of the time it's high balls in the middle. If we train our kids really well to set from position 3, and we teach them to back set and to front set, now we have 2 options more often. I know back setting is difficult, but hey, if we train it and we train it well and we get those kids more and more comfortable with back setting, it's not going to be such a difficult thing. So that's one example. So we'd introduce that setting, serve receive, 5 athletes serve receive. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go over these line by line, but I want you as coaches to read over them, think about them, and then start to say, okay, how am I going to do that? How am I going to introduce it? What does that mean? It probably means that your athletes might not know even what it is. So you have to introduce it so that they start to learn it. Again, if you think back to our motto, learn, master, execute, they got to learn something. So that's usually going to be your introduce. Develop stage means they've probably been introduced to it already, so now they understand it a little more, and that's the mastery. So we start to develop, and then stabilization really is mastery. So develop is, okay, I know what I'm working on, so I'm sort of working through, figuring things out, kind of in that in-between phase. And then the stabilize is like, okay, I really know what I need to do, so now I'm really fine-tuning and mastering those techniques. And so by the time they finish 12U, 13U, 14U, whatever age, they should know the stabilizing attributes and skills, the techniques and tactics that they need to learn for that age group. So, if I scroll past and I go to our 13Us, look what the overall goal is: to prepare all 13U aged players for 14U volleyball. Learning stage is learn to train. One more comment I'll make about the younger ages that's written after the overall goals is, some of our players are multi-sport athletes, and we really do encourage that at KVC. So please do not be hard on your athletes that might miss a few practices due to being part of other sports. I know that's hard. I know we want our players there so we can train as a team. I do realize the importance of that. It does put a little bit more pressure on us as coaches to have to figure out, okay, like I'm missing these. But if they are developing as an athlete, remember this is their long-term athlete development. And so if they're developing as an athlete, they're going to be able to do some things because they are more athletic than the kids who only play one sport. So I pick on hockey a lot because I'm around a lot of hockey players often. So when I watch hockey players who only play hockey, young hockey players, on dry land training, their movement quality is pretty poor. They, they just don't know how to move when they're not on skates. And that's not a good thing for their athletic development. And we can talk about the research and what it says about their increased risk of injury and actually their increased incidence of injury. It's probably going to happen. But also burnout and just them quitting the game before they're really, they're not happy quitting the game. They quit the game because they just hate it and they're burnt out. And so we don't want our athletes to burn out. We want our athletes to make it from 12U to 18U and to finish and to say, yeah, like that was great, And whether they choose to play volleyball or not beyond our 18U, that's totally up to them. If we can get them graduating from our program with a love of the game, that's really what we're about. That's at the core. And yes, we want to graduate as many players to post-secondary institutions as possible. Yeah, that is one of our goals. But at the core of our goal is we want all of our players to love the game. We want our players to graduate and then when they can come back and say, hey, I had such a good time at KVC. I want to come back and I want to coach. I want to give back to the next generation of kids that is playing. So if you scroll down a little bit, you look at your 13 and read through that, and we've tried to bold some of the key words or phrases. As coaches, try and read over those overall goals and again, understand them yourselves. And if you're looking for clarity for them, by all means, kind of like ask. Don't hesitate to ask. And once we get to sort of that 14, look at what the overall goal is: to prepare all 14U aged players for 15U volleyball. Oh, big surprise that we're trying to prepare them for the next year. And the learning stage is learning to train, and we've tried to sort of flush out what that means in that paragraph there. And so I do encourage you to read over those for each age group, so not your own, but every age group. Because if you can see where you fit as a coach within the overall framework of this long-term athlete development, it's only going to make you a better coach at being able to execute what you need to introduce, develop, and stabilize within your particular age group. And it just means that we become more effective coaches because you spend less time, oh shoot, they didn't do this, they don't know how to do this. Okay, well, let's spend more time introducing and developing and stabilizing something that should have been introduced and developed at an earlier age. We want to get to, let's fast forward. So, again, scroll down to the 16, and we sort of consider our 16, 17, 18 as our our senior program or our performance program. Um, so yeah, we'd like to see those kids start to maybe think a little bit more about, okay, you know, I want to be a volleyball player. And maybe start to take the sport like, okay, I have to, you know, maybe invest a little bit more time in this. Okay, so, you know, we're going to spend a little bit more time going to a few more tournaments and, you know, trying to make it our a little bit more of a priority. So kind of at the 16U age is where, as KVC, we would start to sort of say, okay, this is our senior program or our performance program. And the 12 to 15 we would view as like, okay, you know, it's our development program. We're trying to get as many kids playing the game, trying to get them to love the game, and then hopefully trying to get them to see that, hey, yeah, volleyball's something that I want to pursue. And a lot of kids at the 15U age will decide, you know, hey, you know what, I want to play soccer instead, or, you know, I don't really want to do this. I'm not really great at it, and I'm not having a lot of fun, so, you know, I just want to choose something else. And we want them to choose not to play, and not to be like, I hate playing, so there's not a chance I want to touch another volleyball again. So when you hit to our 16U long-term athlete development, you see that the paragraph starts to get a little bit longer because we're starting to add a few more layers to the structure, and we're starting to think, you know, it's still a learning stage of learning to train. And again, like I said, there's a lot of overlap here, and we didn't differentiate between the boys and the girls, because honestly there really is not that much of difference. So if you're reading through it, and so let's say you're a boys coach, boys don't typically run steps, and you see that in attacking for the 16U technical goals, you're introducing, you know, middle blocker, 51, 31, 61 step footwork. Okay, yeah, as if you don't want to run it as a part of the boys program, because men just don't typically run steps, because the C ball or the D ball tends to be a better option than a step, then yeah, obviously it's like, okay, yeah, that's not really for us. And so for our 15 and 16U, one thing I do want to comment on is the general relationship that we want to focus on the most in 15 and 16 is our setters and our middle blockers. So we really need to train our setters to set the middle on a not perfect pass. And we really need to train our middles to be part of the offense and to approach for on any given pass. And so that's why we want to introduce and to develop more than just a 51, a quick in the middle. We want to develop a 31, a 61, and a step for the girls, because we want them to be part of the offense. So when the pass isn't perfect, they're not just standing in the middle of the court doing nothing. We need them to be part of the offense, and we also need to train our setters to be confident in setting those sets, so that when we get to 17 and 18, we can focus on slightly different things. So I would say generally our overall focus on relationships in 15s and 16s is the setter and middle. We really need to build confidence in our setters to set the middles in not perfect passes, and we really need to train our middles to approach. I honestly believe that a lot of middles do not want to play middle when they get to 17 and 18 and after, because they just weren't set enough. Setters weren't confident enough setting them on not perfect passes, okay? And then middles just don't approach, and they don't get the chance to hit, and they see outsides getting a lot more sets and trying to attack the ball a lot more. So I'm kind of convinced that middles don't like playing middle because they're just really not part of the offense. And let's be honest, offense is one of the most fun parts of volleyball, if not the most fun. So if we really work on that relationship between the setters and the middles on our 15 and 16 U's, and we keep those middles approaching and learning to be part of the offense, and we build confidence in our setters to be setting middle in not perfect passes, it's only going to lead us to greater things for when we hit 17 and 18. If you really want to see where to get a good understanding of our entire long-term athlete development plan and what our end goal is, please read the 18U KVC long-term athlete development plan. So the overall goal to prepare all 18U aged players for post-secondary college or university volleyball. We want to prepare them for that. If they don't want to play, fine, totally fine. That's their choice. But we do have players that want to play post-secondary, so we kind of have to honor that goal for them and prepare them for it. And then it's their choice to continue to play the game or not. So if you read through the 17 and 18 long-term athlete development, the relationship that I'll say that changes there is the outside relationship, because as the game gets faster and the serves and the attacks get harder, we tend to dig more rather than pass. So yes, we want to serve receive and we want to be as accurate as possible on serve receive, but as the serves come harder, we tend to dig a bit more, and now the sets are coming off the net, and if we've built confidence in our setters and middles to be part of the offense, then we can continue to set them. But now what we're going to start to work on is block transition. So digging a ball and then having to attack against a formed defense on the opponent's side. So now the pressure's on the outsides to score, to learn to score against a formed block and a formed defense. So at the really young ages, we're just happy to put third contact over, right? That's a huge success for 12 and 13U to just get 3 contacts and put it over. And thank goodness for triple ball, because that is really instilling that understanding of the goal of volleyball is 3 contacts. And that has significantly increased the number of rallies that have been 3 contacts for those young ages. But at 17 and 18U, of course we have a great understanding of 3 contacts, but now we can't just put the ball over because teams are getting better, and if we're just trying to put the ball over, they're probably going to dig it and they're going to slam it back at us. And so the relationship that we want to build for our 17s and 18s is learning how to score against a formed defense. So how do we attack against a 2-man block and sometimes a 3-man block? That for sure is coming. How are you going to use that block? How are you going to attack that ball past their defensive system to score a point or to put them in trouble? And so you start to see tactics coming into a lot more of play in the 17s and particularly 18s, because again, if we're preparing them for college is about systems. They need to be able to, our players need to be able to graduate from KVC, be skilled enough to enter into any system and learn that system and be able to function within that system. So with this being bare bones, I don't think it's important for us to come up with a KVC system. The reason I say that is because I don't want our kids only being good at our system, because what if they choose to go play post-secondary and now it's a different system and they've only learned one system and they can't get out of it, and then they can't adapt to a new system. I would rather our athletes to be skilled and understand the game so that they can take those skills and that understanding of the game and then apply it into any post-secondary situation that they want to. So again, if you're a younger coach, a coach coaching a younger team, please read through the 17 and 18U goals, because it will help you sort of see, okay, that's down the road, and then read your own goals and say, okay, so this is where I fit in that overall scheme. And so again, we really look forward to your feedback. This is really not a set in stone document. It is something that as soon as we finished writing it, we sort of saw, okay, this needs to be added here. And as I said, there's a lot of overlap, but eventually, as the years go on and it gets used more and more, we'll remove some of those things because it will be assumed that they have been worked on and they don't need to be worked on anymore. Or they don't need to be introduced, they can be developed or stabilized. And so it is a document that will change, and it is something that is in constant evaluation. So please don't say or read it and say this is set in stone exactly what I have to do. I really don't want to tell you how to coach. I want to help you be a better coach, and we hope that this document is something that will just give you some context, give you some guidance, and then if you need further clarification, or you want to sort of say hey, is this really something that I should be working on, or we should be working on, or hey, I think we should be working on this, then absolutely I would appreciate those conversations, and love to help you out in every way possible. So again, I do look forward to your feedback. Please feel free to fire me an email if you want to, or yeah, like I said, I'm more than happy to talk about these things. So thanks so much for your time, and I really look forward to seeing how you guys use this year, and also to hear back from you, how it helps, or what are some things that could be added to make it a little more beneficial. So thanks so much for your ears, you guys, and I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you learn.